I lost it.
You lost it a long time ago.
It was 1989, my thoughts were short, my hair was long. Caught somewhere between a boy and man. She was 17.
Welcome to Killer Content, episode 17. I said episode 50 in the last episode because, as usual, JT fucked me up. And it's the continuation of the Michelle O'Keefe story. And I'm glad you guys tuned back in to hear the conclusion of this. So
Crazy podcasting with this last one with the killer content.
yeah, it's a very different story than what we're used to telling. And
And
look
what?
at that. He changed the banner because he fucked up again.
No, it's because we had to make a new recording booth, a new thing. That's what happened. Everything went back to normal. That's why it was fucked up in the beginning. But there we go. I caught on.
So welcome back, guys. Thanks for tuning in again. And yeah, let's get this party started.
Another what? 20 pages of fucking. No, this is great because this one. If you guys didn't get to catch the first one, and it was an excellent one, part one. Go back and watch that one if you guys haven't had a chance.
Yeah, you're not going to get much of what's going on in the second one if you don't watch the first one. So you watch the
Yeah.
first one first and then watch the second one because the story.
It's you gotta hear it all, because if you don't hear it all, you're gonna miss something, and that's what's gonna fuck you up. And it's just it's so far up right now. It's great. It's got me wanting more. So hopefully you guys go back and make sure always like to like and subscribe. I had to throw that late night chat in there just to let you know. That's why I left it on. To be honest with you, it wasn't a fuck up. No.
I think I kind of like not telling you what I'm doing because your reaction is a little more
Bang, like, because you know what, I mean, when you did send me this, it was on the last day. I mean, now it's a little different, but
yeah,
yeah,
usually I send it to you like a couple of days or a week before.
yeah. So this one had got me.
But
The first part got me a little bit more excited. So let's take a look at
yeah,
this.
so this
part's
is your
gonna get
first
me.
time hearing this, right?
Yeah. So this should be interesting.
So we left off with Jennings facing 40 years to life. In the time between his trial and the spring of 2010, he was learning prison life, eating shitty prison food. He appealed and lost and appealed and lost, and his wife divorced him. He turns to his last resort, and that's the California's Innocent Project. Now, this California Innocence Project, or any innocence project, it always baffles me. The fact that you're supposed to have a fair judicial system and you obviously don't because you need something called the California Innocence Project in order to get people who were innocently put in jail out.
Mm-hmm. That's
Right?
yeah.
Like, it always flabbergasts me. Like, we live in a world where, okay, justice is served. Oh, wait, it's not. Now you got to go through this guy who's going to do all he can to try and get you out because we fucked up the first time.
It's not all.
Make
Unfortunately,
sense.
it's not always like that because in a sense that everybody, I bet you, if you ask them that are in jail, they're going to tell you that they're innocent in some way or another, right? So, I mean,
Yeah, but if there's sufficient evidence,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
I don't think you should try someone strictly on circumstantial evidence.
No, it's a very touchy. It's like why walking a tightrope. You know what I mean? You can tip the balance either way, really, when there's not enough physical evidence, right? And especially if there's none whatsoever. I mean, that's kind of hard because there's always something you leave behind. I mean, knowing me, I would probably leave a hair. One of these would fall out or shed or something, and there you go, bang, right? I'm screwed. I'd have to wrap myself in saran wrap, do like a Dexter. I thought about that. That show was the best. Sorry for me.
That show was the best.
I didn't like
did
the way it ended.
Dexter. So the one night in 2015, there's a kid. I call him a kid because he was younger than us. And he was a kid.
Okay.
Clint Ehrlich, and I'm going to fucking butcher this last name because it's been pronounced so many different ways in all the different sources that I went through, and it's got a bunch of silent letters, and you're just, whatever.
Yeah,
So-
it's a grammar. It's a grammar last.
It's a
name,
grammar
so-
fucking thing, but at least I spelt it right.
Yeah.
Clint Ehrlich was sitting at home, and some force compelled him to watch this episode of Dateline NBC.
Okay.
Now, Clint wasn't a true crime fan. In fact, he hated watching TV.
Okay.
But what drew him in was the story of an Iraq veteran that was accused of murdering a girl in a parking lot. And he needed to find out why.
Okay.
So, something to note about Clint is he dropped out of both high school and college, not because he was an idiot, but because his mind works differently. He decided a more hands-on approach on becoming a lawyer was to study under his big shot lawyer's dad's wings and then take his bar and become a lawyer, and a method done in the past by only Abraham Lincoln and Ben Franklin.
Well, I always believe that that's not a bad way, because just because they
No,
can't
because
read the
everybody
books-
learns differently.
Yeah, just because they can't read the books doesn't mean they don't understand what the fuck is going on. Right. I get it, and I hate when there's people out there that do say that about reading books, and it does help you pronounce words better and stuff like that, or maybe it helps with your vocabulary. But at the end of the day, it doesn't determine if you're like a smart or intelligent person in that way.
I don't think that anybody should be measured by the books that they read. I just
No.
think that reading does have its benefits.
It does. I mean, I'm
Right?
not saying it doesn't, but I mean,
But
it doesn't mean
don't
that
think that just because he studied under his dad instead of studying at a university that he didn't have to read. He
Yeah.
had to study all these cases. When you're a lawyer, you have
Oh,
a
of course.
shitload of fucking reading to do. All you do is fucking practically read all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know it's not easy. It's a lot of schooling too, right?
Right after watching that Dateline episode, he logged onto Westlaw and pulled up the court appeals opinion and decided to read it. Clint stayed up all night rifling through the documents, and he was hooked.
Okay.
And by the time he finished reading everything he could about Michelle's case, he could hardly wait to tell his father. It was June 2015 when Clint meets with his dad, Jeff, for lunch and asks his dad, "If I found a case where an Iraq veteran was convicted innocently of murder, would you help me out?" He said, "Okay, maybe. What do you got?" So he emails the court documents to his dad, and his dad became more intrigued. But
Mhm.
Jeff usually dealt with insurance cases. Never had he appealed a murder case, right?
Yeah.
But because he knew his son held some unusual gifts, shall we say, he trusted his son and went along with him.
Oh, that was a nice father, eh? This guy seems like he'd be a nice dad.
So what else appealed to Jeff was the Court of Appealers statement was as follows. And guys, if this doesn't sound fucking ridiculous, the appeal response here essentially saying, "We recognize that there is no witness that saw this man commit the crime. There's no physical evidence to tie him to the crime, that the victim has blood, DNA from another person under her fingernails," and then said, "But there's circumstantial evidence, which is more than sufficient to support the conviction."
So there's a bunch of this stuff, but
So
you know what?
basically, we have chosen to ignore all the real evidence and just
Yeah.
stuck to a theory. And that
Yeah.
the theory is large enough to keep you in jail innocently.
Yeah, that's how the law works, unfortunately.
So the father and son tag teamed all of the evidence. They reached out to Jennings' fiance because they couldn't reach out to him directly. And Jeff said, "Hi, I'm an appellate lawyer." She was very guarded at first. He told her that he thought he could help and that Ray needed help and that he could give the help, or at least he would try, at no charge.
Nice.
He asked her to agree or get his permission to represent him.
So
Jennings
she
had
still
already,
holds all
pardon?
the rights. She still kind of holds all his rights since he's in jail. 'cause-
No, she doesn't, but she's the line of communication to him
Okay.
because he couldn't get to communicate him
So
directly.
they were
So
gonna
he
send
found
him
his
in.
fiance and then
Send
went
her-
and said,
her
"Yeah,
in.
can you call him up and tell him what I'm up to?" Right?
Yeah.
So Jennings had already done more than a decade of hard time.
Mhm.
He faced a hard decision. Does he continue with the Innocence Project, which can take another decade before they can get to his case, or take the pro bono help from his shark of a lawyer with little to no murder experience?
Mm.
When he heard from his fiance, he called Jeff and he had a 15-minute conversation with him. He realizes Jeff is very passionate about his case and takes his help. With that, Jeff and his son get to work. His first meeting with Jennings was described in a way I've never heard before. The guard brings him out to this room and with what looked like lockers, and they put him in his tiny little grated locker, and that's how he could communicate with his lawyer. Isn't that crazy?
In a locker.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah, I've never heard that
Hannibal-
before.
Like a Hannibal Lecter kind
Yeah.
of thing where they bring you
Yeah,
through
like a little
like
locker.
a shark cage or whatever.
Yeah, and then like with a guard in front of it. Here, talk to your lawyer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some hard time, man.
Yeah. So for second degree murder, too, not even first degree, second degree.
Wow.
Yeah. Jeff and his son were determined more than anything now to get Jennings. Like this really hit them hard too, right?
Of course.
In the
I would
meantime,
I'm going.
Yeah, right? Like
yeah.
in the meantime, the O'Keefes had a few years of more tragedy hit them.
Oh wow. Like that wasn't enough.
Right. So first, Michelle's parents divorced. Jason, Michelle's brother, moved in with his dad and continued training to be baseball pitcher, as well as law school. Till one day he was involved in an elevator accident where, although it wasn't deadly, his injuries were bad enough that he could no longer play baseball.
Wow.
Yeah. The doctors, for some reason, prescribed him both fentanyl and morphine for the
Of course.
pain. He
Why
got
not?
completely
It's a meth fucking place.
Yeah. He got completely hooked on the drugs till one day his father found his last remaining child's lifeless body taken due to the overdose.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. Like the amount of pain these parents had gone through is unfathomable. To lose both children so tragically.
Yeah.
God, like
That's the whole family, basically, really. just gone.
that's some next level. Like,
I don't even know the word.
yeah, I mean,
I can't even think of the word. That's yeah. I couldn't even think of how that would feel personally, emotionally, physically.
yeah,
That is kind of crazy.
it is. In the meantime,
of the
pardon?
drugs. I mean, the drugs too. Like, I mean, I know it's the 2000s. We're in the 2000s already, right? But by then, you would have probably known that fentanyl can't be good for you, right? Or this was when they were starting it up, but still,
I think fentanyl's been taken off maybe in the last 5 to 7 years.
only for certain, like, not to prescribe, like to. I mean, it's literally just for like surgeries and fucking, your last
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
So the Ehrlichs asked him why he talked so much. He said, they sat with Jennings and they said, "So why'd you talk so much, dude?"
People ask me that this all the time.
He said, "It was just this personal assessment. None of you," he told him, "I don't know for a fact if that's what happened. Like I just think that this is what it looks like. And I thought it'd be happy to help.
No
Police
shit.
officers, I should be telling them what I saw, what I didn't see, what I think is happening. I thought I was helping."
Yeah. And helping
Now-
solve a case. Exactly.
Right. And I think like his theories were true. That
And
does
that-
not mean that he killed
Yeah.
Michelle. but
He was in the vicinity.
he was in the vicinity. But
Yeah,
just
and
because he could study a crime scene
Yeah.
doesn't
if
make
that
him the
happened to
murderer.
you,
If anything, it makes him smarter than any fucking investigator that was that took
But-
them a month to come to that conclusion.
but you doing, I know that, but it's like you being the investigator and or sorry, being a Jennings and hearing that and giving him your even though you're not a cop, we've done it enough of these now that we can probably figure out and watched or listen to enough crime podcasts so we can understand how
Yeah, but
certain
wouldn't
things-
that theory go away after you examine that fucking coat and pants and realize there was
You
no
would think
gunshot
so.
residue there? Like
you
you
would
should
think
start
so.
looking elsewhere because there's proof that
Mm.
this guy didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because had he shot it to the floor, there would be fucking gunshot residue on his pants. There would be, like
Probably
tons of
political
fucking
stuff
shit.
came into play, man, and started saying, "Listen, close the case quick, man. We're getting too much media press."
Yeah, well,
That falls back on the big guys, right? Not the little guys.
I don't know, man. I think that
But we don't even know where it's going now, right? Like now this is going to take a whole new turn. We don't even know yet. Well, I don't at least. So, I think you're at
now
after you
So-
talk so much.
yeah.
Why do you talk so much? Sorry.
Now, in the time he was still incarcerated, he had a very optimistic view of things. He said he knew he had to keep positive to keep fighting, and being bitter would just hold him back. That was his attitude throughout the whole time. Thank God for that, man.
We're good, yeah, because otherwise you'd be going nuts and shit like
Yeah.
that, and just
Mhm.
seriously knowing that you're innocent and having to deal with the shit you probably have to deal with in jail.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Ehrlichs kept sweeping through all and any evidence they could possibly get their hands on. Some of the evidence was as follows, and guys, brace with me here, okay? These are all facts. Weapon was a
Facts?
9mm handgun, okay? And yet no evidence proved Jennings ever even owned the 9mm. But he did own a gun, and it
Yeah.
was a 308. And it wasn't with him that night because he wasn't allowed to have it during
Work.
duty.
Yeah.
The detectives didn't ever recover the weapon anywhere ever either. Okay.
Mhm.
They didn't even bother swabbing him for gunshot residue, right?
Yeah.
They ended up later on going to swab the coat he was wearing or the thing, but not him physically, right?
Yeah.
Which they easily could have. What they did end up collecting, if you remember, was the uniform he was wearing that night,
Mhm.
and they tested it for gunshot residue, and it came back negative.
Mhm.
Okay. Another important piece of information was that there was no stippling. So gunshot residue that causes burning on the shooter if you shoot too close of a range is called stippling.
Mhm.
And there were no burns on him.
Okay.
Okay. It should have happened to Jennings had he been the shooter, but it didn't. And since the shooter had, according to the prosecution, fired the first shot to the ground at his feet, there would be this phenomenon known as pseudo-stippling, which is shrapnel from the bullet in the asphalt that would tear holes through his pants and possibly legs. But they examined the
Oh, I got
pants.
Mm.
Right.
Nothing.
They examined the
probably nothing on
pants
his
and
legs.
nothing was on them.
Mhm.
Right? And so the absence of pseudo-stippling is more evidence that shows the same way that the absence of gunshot residue on the cuffs of his jacket shows that he didn't fire a gun that night. He didn't shoot a bullet into the ground at his feet that night, which is pretty powerful evidence.
Mhm.
If he didn't fire a gun, he didn't kill her. Right? Also, they looked in vain for evidence that Jennings had been in the car. Things like hair, fibers, fingerprints, DNA. But there was nothing. Nada. Silch. Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Prosecutor Blake told the jury, it was most likely a sexual assault, right? He even called to the stand a well-known FBI behavioral specialist named Mark Safri to back him up. Yet the lack of evidence proved that Blake's version of events was wrong, right? Had he sexually assaulted her, his DNA would have been all over that fucking car.
Yeah. All
Right?
over her.
All over her.
Yeah.
One thing it was not said, Blake to the jury, was a robbery gone wrong. So that prosecutor did not tell the jury that it could have
Yeah,
been a
didn't she have
robbery
money in
gone
her
wrong.
purse?
So wait for it. Because valuable items were left in Michelle's car, her purse for one thing, and separately a wallet with $100 in it, along with credit cards. If it were a robbery, then those things would have been gone, right? But then the Ehrlichs came across a police report that changed everything. There were photos which revealed that Michelle's wallet was not in her purse. Okay. Michelle's wallet, and anybody who drives or is in a car knows this. It fell into that fucking black hole gap under the seat, you know, where everything in anyone's car disappears.
Yeah. I know,
Okay.
right under on the side.
A thief in a hurry wouldn't have seen it, especially at night in a dark parking lot, right?
Yeah.
It just disappears. The fucking car swallows it. That's the section where the black hole is. It suctions everything that you lose in the car there. Okay.
I know there's a lot of stuff you find down there when you go
Yeah.
to try to clean it out.
And her glove box was open. They did steal her phone. Okay. It looked like the car had been ransacked. Someone was probably looking for that money in her purse and they couldn't find it. So to say, oh, it wasn't taken didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's what did make sense to the Ehrlichs based on the police report. Something called a situational felony murder. The situational felony murder happens when it's sort of a young offender. Someone at the beginning of their criminal career is committing a crime, and then it's interrupted like by a car alarm, right? And
Okay.
Jennings heard the car alarm and they panic, shoot the victim, and leave. That was their theory. That makes sense.
Makes a lot more sense because
Doesn't it?
Well, didn't Jennings say back to there was a truck blocking the way or something
No.
of the shooter or something like that?
No,
I thought
he
it
said
was
he
in the
hid
video.
behind the van that was
Yeah.
blocking his view.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But Jeff Elric wasn't a criminal attorney. He wasn't used to poking around crime scenes for evidence of a situation felony murder. So he hired a retired profiler who said it does fit those criteria. Because of their lack of experience in crime scenes, they hired experts, which is, what you should do when you don't have experience or you can't figure something out. You seek someone who does know what they're talking about or does know what to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And how to talk about it.
So the Ehrlichs thought maybe Safri didn't have all the facts before him when he offered the jury his opinions. One of the issues was whether it had been appropriate to allow Mr. Safri to testify about his theory of the crime because there was, in essence, no evidence to support it. Right?
Okay.
It was just his imagination about what happened.
Okay.
So when you go to testify, right, for a criminal case as an expert witness, not someone who was there, right, as someone who has an opinion, that opinion must be formed through fact, right?
Oh, yeah. It's
And-
not circumstantial stuff.
Right. And if the facts weren't presented to him, his opinion shouldn't be even allowed in court
Okay.
because it's literally an imaginative scenario that he created based on circumstantial story. Right?
Because he hasn't seen the evidence yet.
Exactly. The Ehrlichs figured that robbery motive made sense for a particular reason. Right around the time Michelle was murdered, the Park and Ride was struggling with a gang problem. Jeff Ehrlich said they found this just weeks after the murder. There was an anonymous tip that was called in to the Antelope Valley Press, and that was reported to the sheriffs. An investigation that said that it was a gang-related attempt carjacking that went bad, that there were people in the parking lot who were in the parking lot to steal hubcaps or rims or whatever else they could do. I don't know, JT, if you remember in the first part when that was mentioned.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
The cards. I mean, they were saying about the gang and the meth and all that stuff.
exactly. Right. So they knew this and they
Yes.
didn't pursue this.
Yeah,
They just focused on Jennings.
yeah, because he was willing to participate.
Yeah, because he talked too much. That's
Yeah.
basically it, because he talked too much. Okay.
Everybody, don't talk. That's it.
Yeah.
Keep your mouth closed.
They tried to steal Michelle O'Keefe's Mustang that she resisted, and they shot her and left, and it was very specific tip. But it never went anywhere. By then, Ray Jennings was suspect numero uno. Okay. So no matter how deeply the Ehrlichs dug into the investigation, they came up with the same answer. None of the actual evidence implicated Ray Jennings.
Mm.
The case was built on interpretations like Jennings' behavior.
Yeah.
On the night of the murder, Jennings told investigators he saw signs Michelle may still be alive, but didn't rush to her aid. And that's what made Jennings look like a guilty man. What Blake omitted was the fact that, but as an unarmed security guard, Jennings had to been trained to stay back and call police in the event of a shooting. So the prosecutor didn't clarify why he didn't go to her aid. Right?
No.
He didn't. All he said was, okay, he didn't go to her aid. There's, why wouldn't you
That's-
try and save her? Right?
Yeah.
What he didn't clarify was the reason why he said he didn't go back to their aid. They edited that out of the deposition, right?
Yeah, completely.
Because
right?
it wasn't
The whole-
convenient. It's his second day on the job. He wants to keep his job. He wants to, like you and I know, when you're fresh new in a job, you want to do your best always, right?
Mhm.
To make sure that you're kept, right?
Yeah.
There's always that probationary period,
Period.
right?
Yeah.
This
But he
guy
also
took
said
his
that he
job
didn't wanna-
seriously. There were rules and regulations that he had to follow, and he followed them.
Mhm.
That's why he didn't try to save her,
Yeah.
right? Ray acted utterly appropriately, according to the evidence. And that's another thing that I think is wrong with this case, that the prosecution used the fact that he acted consistently with his training as evidence that he was guilty, right? The pile grew into a thicker binder. Each discovery carefully explained each one, pointing to Jennings' innocence. But something was missing too. Seemed like there were blanks in the investigation's paper trail.
Mm-mm.
Things that should have been there that were kind of like they were reading a book with missing pages, except maybe those pages were never there in the first place because somebody overlooked the evidence.
Uh,
Jeff and his son Clint stared at a very repetitive name, Victoria Richardson. Do you remember Victoria?
the cart or
The
the
17-year-old girl that
yeah.
said she talks to Jennings, asked him what happened. He said it was a shooting.
Yeah.
And they sped off, right?
Yeah.
She was a key witness in the trial, and she was sitting in the car in the parking lot right after the murder, 11 spaces from Michelle's blue Mustang. She told detectives, and from the vantage, she said she saw a security guard walk by and then moments later heard some strange tapping noises. At the time, the detectives made what seemed an obvious deduction. Those tapping noises must have been Jennings shooting Michelle. But he had already passed by.
Oh,
The Ehrlichs were convinced. First, they discovered Victoria had a record, drug dealing, violence, etc. Although things about Victoria weren't exactly reliable, they still thought Victoria had to be an important clue. She admitted to the original detectives that she and 3 other people were sitting in her parked car, smoking weed and listening to music at the time of the shooting. So who were those 3 people, and did they see something? Did they do something? No background check into any of those people was done. They didn't ask, didn't talk to any of them, nothing. Had they done that, the whole tenor of the case would look considerably different. Isn't one of the rules, when in doubt, talk to all about even their profiling expert? Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Safri said that it was incumbent on the police to talk to all the people in the car, and they didn't do that. They never ran a background check on those people.
Yeah, they didn't even have names or anything, I don't think.
No. Jeff Ehrlich concluded that police and prosecutors had been blinded by their own theory of the crime, that Jennings was the killer.
Hmm.
It has a name tunnel vision, and it's a form of confirmation bias. Okay.
Yeah.
The Ehrlich were outraged by the investigation, trial, and conviction of a man they believed was innocent. But the legal options available to them were almost nil. The only possible remedy, given that Jennings had lost his appeals, and was a habeas petition, and that was something Jeff Ehrlich would, with all his civil law experience, had never filed before. It could take decades.
A lot of paper to fill out.
Man, that's what I'm saying. Lawyers do nothing but read and write.
That's why they have, what do they call them?
Paralegals.
Paralegals. Yeah, they do all the reading and writing for them. After they go to all the school and all that shit, they say, fuck this. If they're any good, they just hire somebody to do it for them.
Yeah.
That's a whole different ball game. That's a totally different league that we make.
But then, out of the blue, came a gift from the unlikeliest of places. June 29th, 2015, Los Angeles County District Attorney Jackie Lacey announced the formation of a groundbreaking unit called the CRU, shorthand for Conviction Review Unit. Its mission is to investigate credible claims of innocence. The man standing at Lacey's side of the podium was the CRU's new director, Ken Lynch. Broad smile, broad shoulders. He was the former supervisor of the LA's gang unit. Jeff was ecstatic. No need for a habeas petition. No need for a long tilted federal court. They were going to write a letter. Because this new organization
You've got a guaranteed win under the
our
boat.
DAs, right? Our DAs who take care of wrongfully convicted,
like those people that were saying, listen, you don't have enough to prosecute him in the beginning.
Yeah.
Those people formed their own alliance.
Yeah.
That's crazy. They seen all the crookedness. They must have seen a lot of crookedness, and they're just true, honest people, right? That's what kind of things you can think of them, right?
Probably. They said,
They're
let
just
me
following
fucking
the
do
law
something
properly.
about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea
Crazy.
that we could go directly to the DA's office and say, please take a look at this. And that was very appealing. Mind you, they knew theirs would be like one of hundreds, maybe thousands of appeals to this new conviction review unit, one letter. And one letter was the only shot that they had. And Jennings' fate hung on every word. Right. So these guys are unexperienced in murder. They usually deal with insurances. They get a fucking break. They don't have to go to the Supreme Federal Court to try and get this guy innocent.
You can probably write a good letter, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. And they have all the evidence and they're passionate about it, right?
Very, yeah.
So October
October
2nd, 2015, they assembled their 34-page letter.
Wow.
And you
It's
thought
almost
22
as long
pages
as
were
this,
bad,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, I was going already for that one.
They included a 6-inch stack of photocopies called the Compendium of Evidence, and off it went.
Include a 6-inch stack. Wow.
Yeah.
A photocopy. So that at least they didn't have to write everything. They could photocopy some of it.
No, they wrote a 34-page letter plus copies of the evidence. Yeah.
Yeah, plus the 6 inches of copies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, Raymond Jennings had been locked up for 11 years, had been able to see his children only once every year or two.
Wow.
He was about to turn 42. And hope is all this man had left.
For real.
Ken Lynch, the director of Los Angeles DA's Conviction Review Unit, or CRU, finally calls Jeff Ehrlich. He wants to meet, and on March 9th, 2016, and for 90 minutes, they grilled Jeff. Jeff says it was like the most intense oral argument in an appellate argument he'd ever had. He thought for sure they wouldn't get anywhere, but Ken Lynch called him back and said out of 700 applicants, the Conviction Review Unit had chosen to reinvestigate theirs first.
Wow. So he must have had enough, good amount of evidence, man. That's the
Yeah.
thing, right?
And then instead of assisting it to one of their other attorneys in the unit, he assigned it all of them to work on it collectively. So there are 3 other attorneys who work with him, and they're all experienced prosecutors and
Okay, so
former DAs.
that helps him out
Yeah.
too, right? Yeah.
The prosecutors found that it was appropriate to talk to the O'Keefes, Michelle's parents, to let them in on what was happening. However, at the time, they didn't know that the chief deputy DA by the name of John Spillane had taken the CRU's findings, summarized them in a letter to the Superior Court, where a judge put it under seal, and that a hearing was scheduled. So the O'Keefes, Michelle's parents, had no idea any of this was going down.
Okay.
They thought that the right guy was in jail. They fully
Yeah.
believed that he was guilty, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
June 3rd, 2016, when the O'Keefes made a 2-hour drive to LA's Criminal Justice Center, Clint and Jeff Ehrlich had already gone through security, and one by one, Clint and Jeff, Pat, and Mike entered the room. Jeff Ehrlich sat down at the defense table. The hearing about to begin would reveal what the judge had decided.
So this is just the judge goes through it all on his own, and then
Well,
after they file it, there's no actual trial or anything.
Exactly. So basically, it's just a judge who sits
hearing.
at a hearing and comes to and reads out their decision.
What's their decision? Yeah, they already have to go through it on the side somewhere, right?
Right. They read it, they reviewed it,
Yeah.
and the judge had already sealed and scheduled a hearing, right?
Okay.
Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge William Ryan says, and this is what he said at court: people now believe that Mr. Jennings may not be guilty of the crime of which is the victim, that other people are implicated.
Mhm.
Deputy DA Robert Gray spoke. We're prepared to say that the people no longer have confidence in the conviction based upon what we feel is third-party culpability evidence. The judge was careful. Pardon?
It's third party, not even like second party.
Like
That's
there's
third
now
party.
other fucking suspects here, right?
Yeah.
The judge, and think about this. The parents of Michelle are just sitting there having no idea why they're there.
Yeah, they've already been divorced now for a few years, and then they've already have to deal with their other son thing, and now they get called into the court. So you can only imagine.
And this was literally happened 3 months after their son died.
This is crazy. So it's hard for them too. Could you only imagine? And having to be, and then understandingly that it's not obviously his fault, but it is, we'll find out. But yeah, we'll talk about that part at the end. I'm going too far ahead, but yeah, go ahead.
So the judge was careful not to say very much. He'd been told that the investigation was continuing and he didn't want to jeopardize it. But what he did say was that as momentous as it was, that the Department of Corrections, in order to release the defendant in less than 7 minutes, Jennings' sentence went from 40 years, with 11 already served, to free.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he did 11 years of a 40-year sentence that he wasn't even apparently guilty of. Like, I mean, obviously we don't 100% know who the fucking person, but he's not the one without any circumstantial, like, so far. But I don't know. Like, let's keep going. Okay.
Twists and turns, man. Twists and turns.
I'm just telling you from what what I'm seeing here. So go on.
So, but joy on one side of the courtroom was matched by its opposite on the other side. The O'Keefes. They thought the judge was crazy. They were certain Jennings killed their daughter.
Yeah.
Because they don't know the other evidence.
They don't see the other side yet. No.
Yeah.
They haven't seen anything.
They were pretty pissed off. They asked, well, if you're going to release him, why can't you tell us what the evidence is? Mm-hmm. And they said, no, we can't tell you. It doesn't make sense to them. Right?
It's hard to take that as because it's still now it's back to being an open case.
Right.
For innocence, right?
Jennings, in the meantime, went back to North Carolina to be reunited with his 5 kids.
Wow.
A few months after Ray Jennings' release, there was another hearing in Judge Ryan's courtroom.
Uh-oh.
Judge Ryan wiped the record clean. He declared Ray Jennings a factual innocent man.
Nice.
But that wasn't all that happened. That month, Judge Ryan asked 2 deputy DAs and 2 homicide detectives to join him in his chambers. What was said there remained a secret until now.
Till today?
Yep,
Come on.
this year. Quite naturally, there's an important question. If not him, then who? Right?
Okay. Yeah, of course.
That question was at the very heart of the letter from Chief Deputy D.A. Spillane. As you're about to hear, it revealed potential new suspects in great detail without naming them. The untold story goes as follows.
Okay.
So this is what happened.
This is the actual this is what they think happened that day.
Victoria Richardson, she was 17 years old back then, and when she was parked just a few spaces away from Michelle's blue Mustang, smoking weed and listening to music with 2 of her friends, Victoria, you may remember, testified in the prosecution in Ray Jennings' first trial as a witness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Victoria was a hardcore member of the Flushing 50s Bloods. She was a Blood.
There you go.
With a long rap sheet that included assault with a deadly weapon.
Oh.
For years, the Bloods and their rivals and the Crips had been the menace of LA drive-by shootings.
She's in a blue car. Sorry.
The CRU looked hard in the interview she'd had with the police. It took place a few weeks after Michelle was murdered, and Victoria Richardson was arrested on quite separate charge. The CRU discovered that she had actually given investigators the name of a particular male passenger in her car referred to in the DA's letter as John Doe. Okay. According to this CRU, he was young, 18 years old, but he, like Victoria, was a member of the Flushing 50 Bloods gang, and he was already established for a reputation for committing carjackings with a 9mm pistol. Same gun used for Michelle's murder. His list of priors included that he'd been violent towards women before he had pistol whipped one. The fact that he had committed home invasion robberies, carjackings. Also, he was found with an earring that matched the description of Michelle's earrings.
Okay.
And also, most importantly, that there's ballistics evidence showing a very particular defect in the shell casings that were ejected from the weapon used to kill Michelle O'Keefe that matched his.
Wow.
John Doe, meaning that 18-year-old felon in the car, was Victoria Richardson's investigators working with the CRU talked to him. He denied ever getting out of Victoria's car at the park and ride. He was also given the polygraph test, and he asked the CRU discovered that he'd been convicted of one carjacking a few months after Michelle's murder and was linked to a second. John Doe asked a specific question. What kind of car was that? A Mustang? And he asked the victim if it was a manual or automatic. Clint's theory about why he asked that question was because he didn't know how to drive stick. It's not like you and I. We don't, we drive stick, right?
We know how. So.
This moron didn't.
Yeah.
So he was very interested in whether they were automatic or not. So the detectives always acted as if it was mysterious why Michelle's manual Mustang hadn't been taken. But that would be one clue because he didn't know how to drive it.
There's a lot. They don't even sell very good on the aftermarket anymore. Standard cars because nobody knows how to drive them anymore. I know, but nobody knows how to buy them. Though. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Also, he had put bullet holes in it and blood in it. That's another fact that I think was sort of overlooked in the initial investigation. Why didn't he just drive it away? Well, because it was an evidence of murder.
Yeah. Now there's shot holes in it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You're gonna drive a fucking Mustang where you just murdered somebody in it? Like seriously?
Yeah.
You don't think you're gonna fucking get caught and say, "Oh,
you're part of the Bloods driving a blue car"? Oh.
On top of it?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Then there was the weird business of the color of the blue Mustang. Those were the warning days of the LA gang wars, when just being in blue, the color of the Crips, could get you shot by the blue.
There you go. I didn't even get that far yet.
Yeah, but you and I grew up in the Biggie and Pac days, so we know this information, right?
Well, when you said the Bloods, I thought the blue car, right?
No, so you and I know very well about the Bloods and the Crips because we practically lived in the middle of their war. Even though it
Yeah.
wasn't here, we watched it every day on TV,
Yeah.
right? It was a very generational thing, especially when
Big
Pac
time.
and Biggie were alive, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, in spite of all that, sheriff's detectives, including Longshore, appeared to ignore the violent young carjacker and they followed instead something else. Okay. No, it couldn't
Okay.
be the fucking blood. No.
Ah,
There's another theory. Okay.
okay.
According to Victoria Richardson, somebody else was there altogether. Ray Jennings told us about that, what she told Detective Ehrlich, that she had witnessed out of the rearview mirror a Toyota Tercel drive with a white male occupant with a tank top and a red hat turned to the side. Victoria's story, true or not, caught the attention of the sheriff's detectives because they'd heard about a red hat guy who drove a similar car and happened to be wingman to a local drug dealer. They couldn't confirm that, but the detectives did hear rumors that Michelle O'Keefe may have encountered that drug dealer, even though they occupied different worlds. They may have crossed paths of the same parties. Then they heard that the drug dealer bragged about committing the murder. When they found him and brought him in, he denied he never said that. And neither his DNA nor Victoria's story could put him in the crime scene. Now the names have finally been unsealed. Okay. So before I go through the names, look at this fucking Longshore's detective. He should be fired for being such an idiot. Like, I wouldn't want him investigating my murder.
Well, I don't think a lot of people would after this whole, like, I mean, he skipped a whole shitload of
So
stuff.
you find out Jennings is innocent,
They
but
didn't want to do
instead
the
of going
paperwork.
after the other guy who has a fucking proof that he was there and very likely committed the murder, you go after the other one
No, that's
whose
unbelievable.
DNA was proven not to be in there.
Yeah. It's that's crazy. And it's just because I feel like you know what it feels like to me, that the cops themselves had a guy who was just talking a lot and they didn't want to do paperwork, so it just made it so much easier this way.
Andrew Stewart is the gang member. That's his name.
Okay.
And the second one was Brian Kellogg,
Like the commercial?
like the cereal, yeah.
Like the cereal commercial, I was gonna say.
He
Yeah.
was the drug dealer.
Wow.
The hearing ended and Michelle's murder remained unsolved. And then the courtroom closed and the trial ended. And that was 6 years ago to date. Jennings, and this part irked me, was awarded $500,000, so $500,000 for 11 years in prison. You tell me that's enough.
Well, it probably depended on where he worked, and that's what they took into account, right? I understand, but they fucking wrongfully.
It's not just where you worked and how much you got paid.
And
It's
pain
your
and suffering
children
too.
who you
Yeah.
could not feed.
Yeah.
Your 5 children who you
Yeah.
could not feed.
Yeah.
Your wife who you
He's
could
gonna make
not
a
support.
relationship with them again too after that much
Yeah.
time.
The time that is priceless that
Yeah.
you took away from, and the emotional fucking stress,
You guys listen to this because she's very passionate about this. Look at that.
and you give
Emotion.
him a
It's
measly
true.
500 fucking grand. If I were Mr. Jennings, I would take that entire police department and sue the shit out of them for at least $1 million on
Yeah.
top of the 500,000.
I know. It's bad. That's bad. That's sad. But it's also sad that because of the O'Keefe's now don't have they I don't know whether they ended up pursuing anything else
So,
after this or what happened, but
unfortunately, they still believe Jennings was the killer.
so even though the court of law says that he isn't with all the
They
evidence,
think the judge is crazy.
so they can still hold that conviction and not reopen the case in that sense. That's kind of stupid too, if you think. I guess they don't have the money to
No,
reopen
the case is still open.
but they won't. But yeah, well, they still think he's, so they're not going to go after those guys. Sorry,
They will, but those guys are in jail.
already, so they can't
So
tag
what's
it
the
on.
point?
And it's also too if her parents want to go over it all over again, right?
Well, I think the investigation is still going on, but there has to be something amiss. You have DNA. We're living in
Yeah.
2023. Why can't you just go up to Andrew Stewart, test his DNA, and see if it's a match?
Yeah.
And boom, just add on to his sentence. Right?
It's probably a process.
Because they were able to prove that the other guys wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? But nothing I found about the blood gang member, Andrew, being tested. So these are questions that I have. So that's what I say when I think it's solved, but it's unsolved still.
Yeah.
I think because the investigation is still going, that information can't be provided. Right?
Makes sense.
So maybe I'll do a little update episode on a whole bunch of different updates on things that I've spoken about on these podcasts one day, like a little mini. But yeah, this one
still really unsolved, basically.
Yeah.
Even
And
though they think it's
horrible
solved.
for the parents.
Yeah, of course. First,
I feel horrible for Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
Longshore can get a colonoscopy without an anesthesia for all I fucking care.
Which one is him?
He's the detective that fucking thinks that Jennings was guilty.
Well, you gave me a few pictures, so that's why I was trying to figure out which is the doofus.
No, I didn't even bother with a picture of that idiot. But like, yeah, those are the things that I think about this case. It really intrigued me that it was a case not just about a tragic death, but a whole bunch of twists and turns. An innocent guy.
Was the car ever parked 11 spots away?
Yeah. So what happened was, so there's two theories on what could have happened with the car being moved, because the car was one place. Yeah. The one theory was that she needed to change before she went to class.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
And so she moved the car. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the car, I don't think that's what happened.
Because I do have a picture.
I took a picture of it.
Yeah, I do. And it's in a weird spot. It looks kind of like somebody tried to do something. Somebody tried to move or take off.
What I think is he tried to drive.
Yeah, but
and realized that it was body a stick and just left it and let it roll.
Wasn't the body in the car though?
Yeah, the body was in the car.
And did they say where though? In the passenger side or the driver's side? Because I mean, he would have to have moved her over.
It was in the passenger side. I think it could have also been a mix of two, right?
Yeah,
she could have gone to the passenger side, moved the car somewhere else to get changed, and then in he pops, tries to move the car. She tries to beat the shit out of him, and he shoots her.
He ends up over the fucking thing here, the curb. Yeah, you can see it ends up over a curb.
Yeah.
Right? So, which is kind of weird. You know, it's kind of a weird position for the car, you know, especially if you're going to take off your clothes. I mean, if that's so, he must have tried to move it. Something must have happened.
Yeah.
So
I don't think she was sexually assaulted.
No. And it still kind of looks well lit where it is there too. There's a pole right here, right? So you would think there's got to be some light, right?
Yeah.
But who knows, right? But yeah, what were the other ones now? So I have these on here.
Yep. Put the picture.
Go back. This is the last one. So this is her.
So this is her. This is Michelle. Really pretty girl. She kind of looks like Melanie Lansky.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah. I gotta watch what I say then in that sense, if you say it like that. So
she's pretty.
She's very pretty, yes.
Yeah. That's her mom. That's her dad, Michael O'Keefe.
Yeah.
That's her brother. That's Ray Jennings.
That's the guy, eh?
Yeah, that's Ray Jennings.
What he looks like now or before when he was going
to jail? That's what he looks like now. That's Clint, the genius kid who by chance watched that Dateline episode, and had he not watched it, Jennings would probably still be in jail.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's his father, Jeff, who actually got him out of jail.
Wow, crazy. So yeah.
Yeah.
That they did quite a bit there, man, to help this guy out. You know, you don't see too many things about people, you know, trying to help people like that, right?
Yeah.
So he got lucky, I guess, in a sense too. Very lucky that he had
Yeah.
somebody, and he was able to get to the right people somehow. Because he got divorced in jail too, right? So I mean, he had no real
Yeah, he
contact
lost
to the
his
outside.
wife. Kids barely know him. What
Yeah, I
relationship
mean,
you gonna get with your kids, right?
yeah, it's hard, right? And how you supposed to make up for that relationship, right? So, and then how was he? He had no connection to the outside. So really, he must have just lived in there and just did what he had to do. Sounds like a movie almost, to be honest with you.
Right? You can make a movie out of this one.
Yeah, it sounds like something out of a movie. Really, you could basically start it off like that too, especially a Kid Rock concert, and then like it does sound kind of out there. You know what I mean? Far fetched. So it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy, man. That was a crazy, that was crazy, man. To how long of a study you did of both of these cases, like the same case, right?
Well, yeah, it's one case with like 3 cases in them.
I can see why it kept you looking, because it was intense, man.
So intense. I did not know where this was going.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right?
And then I had to watch the YouTube videos of this guy, like of the court. And I was like watching him speak, and I was looking at him. I'm like, if he were guilty,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he'd be able to, I don't think he would have even turned around to make sure that they looked him in the eye, right? And said, look, I did not kill your sister. Like, he looked at him in the eye, said, I did not kill his sister. But if you guys want to listen to the 6-part episode of The Girl in the Blue Mustang,
is it a YouTube or is it a podcast?
It's a podcast. It's very, very, very good. Very detailed. But you hear Jennings speak in this interview. Like these guys actually interviewed every single character or every single person I spoke to about here. I mean, Longshore's interviewed. Jason O'Keefe, may he rest in peace, was interviewed.
Wow.
Ray Jennings was interviewed. Like, it was years long investigation these guys did before, like, everybody, I mean, every single human involved in this case that I mentioned was interviewed. And the story was told so well. This is a long one, but I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was, it had a happy ending, but a sad ending too. I mean, it's unresolved. So
takes you back, because like you were saying, it was the same age around us. So like, just think about it. When your parents used to freak out because you didn't come home for a couple of hours and you didn't have any way to get a hold of you, right? Like, I remember so many times my mom growing up calling the cops on me and my brother because she was panicking, because it was just a single mother, and fucking me and my brother take off for hours during the day, right? And no way to get a hold of us, no nothing, right? And we weren't doing anything wrong.
Cell phones when we were kids.
Yeah, but just and then having stuff like this probably in the late 80s and stuff, in early 90s, when a lot of stuff was, people were disappearing. There was a lot of kidnappings and stuff like that too going on all around North America, I think, around that time too, right? But just before that cell phone age, I think it was just starting in before the cell phone. Once the cell phones came out, it was a little harder, I think.
This was 1999.
This was different.
This was an era of pagers.
Yeah, drugs,
flip phones,
gangs.
And not everybody had a flip phone, guys.
And you forget it's LA. There's a gangs.
The Crips and the Bloods were at their peak.
Were huge. Yeah, it was huge back then.
So,
yeah.
And these parents, they had no reason to fear something happened to her because she was a kickboxer.
Mm-hmm.
She knew how to defend herself. She was smart about parking the car under lights or whatever, right? She was hardworking. She was intelligent. Like I said, she was an overachiever, right? Responsible, right? And fuck, like, it just goes to show you can show your kid how to self-defend or be as self-sufficient as you possibly can. but there's some evil out there, man, and people are nasty, and there's good. There's a lot of good. I see a lot of good. I mean, look at what happened to Jennings. Like,
Mhm.
who would have thought I'd actually call a lawyer a great human,
Yeah.
right? Like, this lawyer was a great human.
Mhm.
No experience, but he's the guy with no experience is the only lawyer that he had after 3 trials that can get him out,
Yeah. It's crazy.
right?
But evidence had changed too in a lot of that time too. A lot of that time
No,
period.
that evidence was
Huh?
always there. It
But it
was
never
just
changed.
hidden.
Yeah. They never used it.
No.
Yeah. So there you go. They never used. Yeah, they never used the because in the beginning you never said you told us about the fingernail thing when he was in like the 3rd trial, but they never really used it.
All the
You never
DA
said.
presented was the circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have been the person. Yeah, might as well put it on the only security guard there. Nobody will know that it was not him because he was the only one there.
Yep.
And nobody will know that it was him because nobody was there except him,
Mhm.
unfortunately, right? So they just decided. You know what? That's what it seems like. It seems like they got the pressure on the top from the media after they went on that Montel Williams show and they said, pin it on somebody and hurry the fuck up.
Yeah.
So we don't have to fucking deal with this backlash of fucking, and then they move on to the next story. You know what I mean? In a sense, especially and like you said, in the LA at that time, there was a lot more to deal with, like crime, gang wars, and stuff like that. They would never think to I don't know why they wouldn't think that though, especially if it was in that area too, right? If it's been happening in that area.
Yeah, but the Jennings, it was only his 2nd day on the job. He didn't know that that's what was going on. He's from North Carolina. He's not.
Yeah, I
from
know, but you would
California.
think the cops would know that, right? Is what I'm
Yeah, but the
saying.
cops weren't focused on that.
No, they were focused on the easy way out.
And remember, half the cops were afraid of the Bloods or the Crips.
Yeah, that's what I mean too. There was wars going on down there too. There was riots with the cops and the gangs. So
Yeah.
it was out of control back then, too, right? So they just probably wanted it fucking locked up and closed, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, somebody loses a life, and then also that's never solved, and also somebody's loses 11 years of their life for something they never did, right? Which is sad on both ends.
Oh, not to mention the kids that lost a father for 11 years.
Yeah, no, and then the rest that comes along with it is there
Right?
for sure.
Losing your wife, losing your family.
Yeah. I know, it's unbelievable. I can only imagine what you said it was on Dateline, the original story.
Yeah.
It's probably so. There's probably got to be a video of Dateline there somewhere, right?
Oh, there's lots of them, but this podcast was like on its own.
Yeah.
Right?
But I'm just saying, if you wanted to see, like, because the Dateline stuff is kind of, you can see how they point it in one way, right? They can point it in one way. I wonder if there's if we can find a Montel Williams show about it, like something that was posted up on
I'm
YouTube.
sure. Let me look at. Hold on.
But yeah, it's just because it's weird, right? How that works out, because you never know, right? So, because if that show was recorded, it's got to be out there somewhere. This is the internet nowadays, right? So let me just throw a text. But yeah, so everything, guys, this was a crazy 2-parter though, man. Don't always like and subscribe, guys, for the more and more killer content. Yeah, we were a little bit behind on the last 2, but we put out, but we're all caught up now, right, Leslie?
Yeah, we have. My next one is going to be a very different one too. It's not going to be a serial killer one, but a great. Well, not a great story. Probably one of the ones that make me feel really pissed off.
Why?
I don't know. It's just something that happens. No, I don't see it.
Yeah, it's probably something that's been banned or blocked. If it's
Or
not,
they
if it's, like
probably
you said, if
pulled
it's an open investigation, it's probably been pulled, right?
Probably.
Because that
But
was
yeah.
the one that they fucking chopped up. So that's interesting.
Yeah, the other one, I don't like telling people ahead of time what I'm doing, because sometimes something else pops up and I put the one that I'm working on the back burner and start working on another one, because I get this one is like, okay, I have to, because this one is like so fresh and I get so excited. But this one I've been working on for quite a while, actually. I think in the beginning of my hiatus, I started working on it right away because it got my mind off things. And yeah, it was really, really intriguing. Like, I don't know, like, I'm a parent, and fuck, like,
Drove you nuts.
it drove me fucking nuts. I see all sides. I feel horrible for these parents. My heart goes out to them. The O'Keefes, like, you lost 2 children so tragically, but this guy is innocent, and then you think that it's hard to think with a clear and you trust the police, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to think with a clear mind when other information is presented to you. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a tough situation. I understand them, right? Even if I don't agree with them, but I understand them, and it's pain. This whole and this is what I don't think that these are mistakes that should keep police officers or investigators working. So here's what I mean by that. We all have jobs, right?
Okay.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? But there are mistakes, and then there are massive life-changing mistakes.
Yeah.
And if you're responsible for making a life-changing mistake like this, and it's proven that you're an investigator who is incapable of having nothing but tunnel vision in a case, you shouldn't be an investigator, and you should be fired.
You would think there's some sort of way,
but there isn't.
No,
they keep them with pay.
No, I'm saying when you're coming up as a cop or something like that, to kind of understand it.
I think things have changed. Yeah. And again, I don't know how much, because the United States of America work very differently than us in Canada. Okay. Our cops actually have to have extensive training before they can work independently. And they're adding to that psychological training for people with mental health. So, I mean, like, we evolve here in Canada.
Yeah.
We don't get everything right. We're not perfect, right? But there's an evolution. And there's no evolution, I find, in the way things are done in the US. They don't learn from their mistakes, right?
I don't find the same. I find the same thing either. They don't.
Pardon?
I find it the same, that they don't learn. I don't know. There's just certain people, period, that just can't learn from their mistakes.
It's like you have a big problem with mass shootings. Domestic terrorism is your biggest form of terrorism. It's not foreign terrorism, yet you have more money invested in defending your country of foreign terrorism than you do in controlling your domestic terrorism, right? I mean, your kids are unprotected. You don't do anything to change that. I don't understand. I mean, like, you know how I see the States? I see the States as like a sibling, okay? You're allowed your siblings. You fucking can't stand looking at your siblings when they're making stupid choices, but you still love them, right? And if something fucking happens from someone outside picking on your sibling, because you're your sibling, you're forced to fucking defend them, right? But you're allowed to tell your sibling that they're fucking up. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the way, as a Canadian, I see things, right? So, American, anybody, you're fucking up, okay? This whole situation is not a singular one. Because if it were a singular one, you wouldn't need an organization that gets all these fucking innocent people out of jail.
True.
And it's not just that you have an organization that gets innocent people out of jail. It's an organization with decades and decades and decades of a backlog of innocent people that need to be getting out of jail.
Yeah. And they know
And I
they
don't-
got the proof at least for.
Pardon?
They got the proof at least for. It's just it's so much work and to get them out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's
crazy,
like-
man.
Ah,
See, there's one thing when you don't have the evidence and whatever, and back before these times when you could have collected evidence properly and whatever and held on to it, and now you get DNA, blah blah blah. But it's one thing when you don't do it properly when you do it properly that way and then it's wrongfully done. When they check it later on, it's one thing. But when you don't even use it or you don't even take into account that sort of thing, then you're being negligent on your job. That's something wrong with you doing your job. If I did something wrong on my job that could fucking ruin somebody's life, I know I'd be held
be
negligently
fired.
responsible. But I would also probably be held responsible in fucking court, man, if that came down to it, right? So
and that
in
doesn't
civil
happen.
court at least.
And that doesn't happen in police culture. Nobody, and it continue. And part of the problem is that there is no accountability being taken within police culture. Right? So police are policing on the streets, but nobody's policing the police.
Yeah, well, there is supposed to be a type of a unit that does that, but I know it's still there's still police, right? So it's hard. It's a hard one to I've always don't understand how that works when they actually work with the same people. They are technically the same people in the same organization, right? It's not an
That
outside.
shouldn't be happening. There should be
Not
an
an
outside
outside,
organization whose sole job is to police the police.
Mm.
Right? And not just police the police, is when you find out that they fucked up majorly like this, you don't send them home with the
Spank them on
pay.
bum.
Right, but I'm just saying,
Yeah, I know.
oh my God, you want to suspend me with pay?
Thanks.
This is a vacation,
See you later. Yeah.
right?
No. Yeah. Like a slap on the wrist.
And sometimes investigation takes years before they're allowed to come back with a suspension from their suspension.
Yeah, they can fight it, right?
It drags and drags and drags and drags. And it's just like, you know what? What's the fucking point, man? No, you're suspended without pay while we investigate.
Yeah, it's all based on circumstances, right? And who knows? I don't know what the circumstances are, but
That's it.
there's some
We
that
investigate.
get
You're not
paid and
getting
don't get
paid.
paid.
Or you're getting paid minimum wage at this point, and that's all you're fucking getting paid until we figure out you're not getting your full salary. Fuck you. You just get enough, like a social security check, like the rest of the fucking world does, okay, to hold you by and maybe feed you, right? So that's a punishment while we investigate you.
Yeah,
now,
sure.
if the investigation comes through and you're an innocent human or an innocent police, then you pay back the wages, right? As if they were working, and boom, you move on. You keep the guy. But why should he fucking get paid his full fucking salary with pay? Like, fuck that shit. What is that?
Yeah, I know. I hear you.
I'd be corrupt
argue
too.
the same thing.
Are you kidding me? Every key of cocaine I'd find,
We reselling it.
I'd be reselling it.
There you go. You gotta hear. That's it. Tell them, Leslie.
Oh, keys, boom. All right, in one way, out the other.
That's it. No,
Like, fuck, I could be a corrupt cop.
yeah. It's so true. It's so true. It's just like anything else, though, in this world.
Yeah, I mean, but still,
It's all
fucking
it all
bullshit.
makes what type of person you are. That's what you gotta. It boils down to, I think, of what type of person you're made. How
I
you're
know, and
made.
if you're not the right type of
If you're
person
type of
to be
the
doing
right
a
person,
certain
human being.
job, you shouldn't be doing it, and you shouldn't be rewarded for being suspended either.
No, obviously you're not.
Fuck
Most
that.
jobs don't get that.
No other job gets that unless you're a police officer.
I mean, I think I get suspended. I can get suspended with pay. So,
You?
yeah,
No, not me.
yeah. So, but yeah, that's another story for another time.
Look. Anyhow, guys, I love this.
This is a great one.
See you next time for another fucking fantastic story too. Not really. It'll probably get you as mad as I do because I get really frustrated with these fucking stories sometimes. But they have to be told, they have to be explained, and not only have to, I enjoy saying it because I think it's important to understand from a Canadian perspective the bullshit that goes on so that it doesn't spread over here.
Yeah, straight up, eh?
Hmm.
We don't need it spreading over here.
No, man, there's too much over there already spreading over here, and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's like shit leaking up, rolling uphill.
Yeah, too much hate in this world.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
But yeah, guys, make sure to like and subscribe, guys, and you get some more killer content. All right, guys, stay tuned to Late Night Chat. All right,
Have a good night. Thanks for tuning in.
see ya.